Alright guys, welcome back to What If Marvel Rivals. Today we're going to be looking at Loki. He is a strategist support character for Marvel Rivals, and we are going to be making him into a, wait for it, tank. Yeah, so a lot of people wanted him to be a DPS. I saw a lot of people saying that he could have been a DPS or should have been a DPS. I do think that he definitely should have been a DPS considering he's a villain, but I do like how they made him a healer, especially one that can kind of move around like a Sombra type character but also heal. I do like that fact, but I'm going to make it a little bit of a stretch and say that since he is a god, I'm going to try and build on that and make him a tank from his kit. So when we look at his kit, he has his support stats. His health is 275. His playstyle is area denial. He can deny an area by using his clones and regenerative lamps to basically make an entire damage reduction AoE area for his team. His primary is Mystic Missile, just fires a blast out of his staff. His secondary is Backstab. He whips out a knife. Stab melee does extra damage if he stabs an enemy from behind. And he has a passive that allows him to swap himself with one of his duplicates called Devious Exchange. His primary ability is placing his doppelgangers, places a Loki clone that will duplicate his ability set when it comes to his magic missile fire, basically meaning that he can double his damage and even triple and quadruple his damage because he can put out 3 clones. He also has an ability Deception, which he can become invisible and spawn a Loki clone in his place, basically giving him 3 Loki clones out doing damage while he can sit around and be invisible the entire time. And then his final ability and most overpowered ability besides his ultimate is his Regenerative Domain. Places an AoE circle with those little lamp crystals above it, above each of his clones, which heals all enemies inside and converts 30% incoming damage into healing, basically giving them 30% damage reduction and also lifesteal as well, which is pretty dang useful. And finally, his ultimate, God of Mischief, is basically Echo's ultimate from Overwatch. He duplicates an enemy player and immediately gains access to their ultimate, basically meaning that he can use another player's ultimate for free. And of course, his team-ups are the Villain's Illusion. When he teams up with Mantis and Hela, he can steal an ability from a fallen ally or enemy. So basically, as long as they're dead, he can copy their ability, no problem. It cannot be their ultimate, however, and it only lasts for 6 seconds, but he can use stuff like Rogue's Energy Steal ability, Emma Frost's Diamond Form, and Punisher's Turret. When it comes to an enhancement of this form, his transformation lasts plus 4 seconds more, so it gets 10 seconds instead of 6, and if you were dealt lethal damage during your ultimate, you revert back to Loki with 30 health, which basically gives you a death save, because if you are killed during your regular ultimate without this team up, you'll just die immediately, so this basically gives you 2 lives. Now when it comes to Loki's tank stats, it's going to be a little bit of a stretch when it comes to how I'm going to do this, but essentially I'm going to give him 300 base health. Now this is very low for a tank. It would make him the lowest health tank in the game. However, what Loki's version is going to be similar to how Wolverine, if you deal lethal damage, his adaptive healing will give him an extra death save, basically extra health afterwards. So basically Loki is going to get a death save, but it comes from his clones instead of just a regular passive. So his primary is Mystical Missile, no change, he just launches blasts from his staff. His melee attack, instead of being a punch, is going to be his backstab ability, so basically going to take his passive and make it his melee ability. So his melee ability is now backstab, no change there. If you stab someone in front, it does less damage than if you stab them from behind. And I'm going to make his secondary have a 6-second cooldown instead of a 12-second cooldown, and basically just making it half so he can exchange with his clones more frequently. This will make him more hard to hit, which is going to play into his playstyle, which I believe can be a damage soaker tank, where his clones and himself can soak the damage, and basically means that he can put all of his clones out and they soak the damage while dealing damage back. So when it comes to his passive, his Deceptive Tactics is a new passive. His clones have 250 health each one deals damage only, meaning they do not deal healing anymore, they just do pure damage. However, when your clones are active, you gain an emergency 50 health each, meaning that you gain 50 health when you gain 50 health for each clone that you have out. So you have a max of 5, I'm going to make it because we're going to get to his clones in a second here, but if you think about Loki right now, he can have a max of 3, that means that if he has all 3 clones out, he could have 450 health base. So he gains 50 emergency health for each one. If you take lethal damage for each clone you have deployed, you have 50 health per clone that you had deployed, 50 health for each clone that is out right now, and as long as one remains, you can switch its place and turn invisible. Basically gives you a free use of your deception ability, allowing you to devious exchange. Basically allows you to play devious exchange for free if you take lethal damage. Switch places, spawn a clone, and for every clone you have 50 over health. So it basically gives you a death save. It basically gives you up to 150 health. 150 health if you have all 3 clones out. But for Loki, I'm going to make it a minor health change. His ability Doppelganger, all of his Doppelgangers will have 250 health instead of 200, and will spawn a Loki clone as usual, but it'll be max 5. So that means that your passive actually gives you 250 over health when you take lethal damage. Basically meaning that you technically, if you have all 5 clones out, you have 550 health, and that is 300 base health plus 250 per clone you have, which would be 250 if you take lethal damage, meaning you basically, when you take lethal damage, almost back to full health. And you can heal yourself back to full health. Deception is basically no change. You spawn a Loki clone in your place and become invisible. I think this works for a tank like him. He's still Loki, God of Mischief. I really do think that visibility is still good for a tank to have, especially one like Loki, where I think that damage choking is going to be his ideal with his clones, tanking the damage while he can go away. This spawns another Loki clone, which technically means he could have 6 clones out in the field at once, which means he could technically have 300 bonus health if he takes lethal damage per his passive. So he can technically have 600 health overall if he takes lethal damage right after using deception. And then finally, Dark Domain is a major boost. It's basically his regenerative domain, except it no longer heals allies. Loki and his clones gain plus 75 over health each for each one that is in a Dark Domain. Dark Domains spawn each lantern crystal above their heads, creates a green space around them. Each clone that has this has plus 75 over health, and Loki also gets plus 75 over health as well when using this, so he has 375 base health now. His clones, Loki and the clones, shoot 50% faster, meaning they do 50% more damage over time. He also has infinite ammo for his primary, meaning he doesn't have to reload, which is also useful. It lasts for 7 seconds instead of 5, so it lasts longer, so it deals more damage and lasts longer. And the cooldown is 15 seconds down from 30 because it doesn't actually heal enemies and allies anymore, which was the main thing it did. And the reason why it was 30 seconds is also gave him 30% lifesteal, which this one does not have. So I do think that the cooldown can go down from 30 seconds because it's not as overpowered as it used to be. It's just a buff for Loki alone and his clones. So it's mainly just a boost for him. Now when it comes to Loki, his God of Mischief is going to have a major change to it. It lasts 3 seconds longer because he is now a tank instead of a support, so he's a little bit less viable when doing this. It lasts for 15 seconds instead of 12. He's able to cast an enemy's ultimate twice if he generates enough charge, and Loki has plus 75 over health on top of that max HP. So if let's say he copies the Punisher, which has 300 base health, he now has 375 health as the Punisher and can use his ultimate twice if he gains enough charge, meaning that if he uses the ultimate, he still has another 5 to 7 seconds to maybe even gain that ultimate back with times 5 ultimate charge during his ultimate. So as long as he does enough damage after using an ultimate, he can potentially cast it again, which is sick. But yeah, so for Loki's tank playstyle, I do think that he's got a few options. He could be a control tank similar to Penny. His kit suits a defensive control situation where he can place his clones around an objective area and then hide away when caught. Basically how Penny can set down a bunch of mines, Loki can set a bunch of clones to basically shoot at all incoming opponents from every which way. Basically can set up a pretty much a sentry turret type scenario on any objective, be it a payload or a control point. And then, of course, if he gets in trouble, he can do what Penny does, either zip away with her web or trap an opponent. He can basically turn invisible using deception and hide away. Another situation is a flank tank. He can sneak around undetected with his invisibility, placing his clones in hard-to-reach spots, hitting enemies from all angles, basically making him have a Torbjorn or Namor playstyle, where he can place his sentry turret clones around the map and deal damage from above. basically making him kind of a hybrid aerial tank, but with no flight. But I do think this may be his primary thing. While his DPS teammates are flanking, his clone army can tank damage in the front line, providing no ultimate charge for enemies that hit them, meaning that he can just spawn them in a line, they take damage and block damage as well, and the enemies who shoot them, of course, don't gain any ultimate charge from dealing damage to his clones, so he can kind of just block enemies. Like if he's got a support line behind him, just place down all 5 clones, and maybe even use Deception to put down his potential 6th clone down, and then he can hide away while his clones deal damage and block enemies, because, I mean, if you place all 5 of them down, that's 250 times 5, that's 1,250. It's basically a 1,200 shield, health point shield that you've put in front of your team. So I do think this is a highly useful situation, and he can either be a control tank, flank tank, or damage soaker. And finally, his team-ups, there's going to be one major change, but no change to the enhancement. The major change is that he can copy a Fire player's ability for 6 seconds, be it an enemy or ally, no change there. But if he's boosted by Mantis, if Mantis uses her boost, her right-click ability to boost his damage, he can place up to 7 clones each, but they will have reduced health. So 200 instead of 250, however, he will still get that plus 50 from his passive if he takes lethal damage, which means he can potentially have up to 350 health if he takes lethal damage, meaning he technically has 650 health. If he's boosted by Mantis, which is massive. Also 7 clones, having 200 each, a little bit less, meaning they're easier to kill, but if you place all of them in a line, it technically is more, because instead of having a 1,250, for a total of 5 clones with 250, 200 times 7 is 1,400. So there's technically more damage to be blocked if you're boosted by Mantis. And finally, your enhancement is no change from before. Your transformation lasts plus 4 seconds, and if you're dealt lethal damage during your ultimate, you're reverted back to Loki with 30% health with your death save ability. So no change to the enhancement, but a major change that makes Mantis more useful when it comes to this team-up. Now, when it comes to Loki and ranking this, I think it somewhat works. I can see a lot of people saying he should be a DPS, and that's why I don't think it is in the should have happened category, because I do think it is nice that he is a healer, but I do believe that most people think that he should be a DPS, which is why I didn't put it in should have happened. If you think that maybe it deserves to be higher, like it could have happened, he could have been a tank since he technically is a god, like Thor is, and Thor's a tank, but also Hela is a DPS, so it makes a little bit of sense that he may have been a DPS instead of a tank. I don't know, I think that it's kind of cool that he can use his clones to give him overhealth if he takes lethal damage, meaning that his health pool doesn't really reflect his full HP total, which means he technically is similar to Wolverine in that he does have extra health. And I also do like the concept of using your clones to soak damage and block incoming damage as basically a protectorate tank, meaning that he is somewhat basically a shield tank, but also his shields can also attack. So he's basically got sentry turrets that also block damage, don't grant ultimate charge when killed, and deal more damage, so he can double, triple, quadruple, quintuple, and sextuple his damage output. That's why I'm putting him in the somewhat works. I think it works because he technically does fit that tank role when it comes to soaking up damage, shielding your opponents, and controlling the objective, which is what tanks are supposed to do. They're supposed to tank the damage, put a little bit damage back onto the opponents, but also they're supposed to control the objective, contest it. And that's what I think Loki would do in his tank form, and obviously he does have an escape using his deception to turn invisible. So I do see how people could either have this higher, but I also see how some people could rank it lower. Maybe it's 50-50. People are saying, I can see how you came to that, but also there's some pros and cons. Pros is that, yeah, I do like the damage counter and the contestment, but I also think that his deception ability that allows him to turn invisible is a little bit of a con, is a kind of a negative, because it kind of makes him more of a DPS, because he could just be a dive, put down all of his clones, then disappear and deal damage. That's something you could do instead, which I see that, I hear that, I think that's a good possibility. I do see how that's kind of a con, how it gives more argument to the fact he could be a DPS. And you also see people who say it's a stretch, saying, he's kind of not really tanky, he's kind of like a sniveling, villainous character, and that really he doesn't fit that whole tank arc when it comes to that persona, so you could put it in a stretch. I don't think it's a no way Jose scenario, but I do think you could argue that he's got 50-50 pros and cons, or it's a little bit of a stretch to call him a tank. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe down below if you're new to the channel, and I'll see you guys with the next hero. Toodaloo!